Carden.
What a funny show! Holy shit! Hi guys, it's nice to meet you. I'm Darcy Carden. I'm so excited to talk about In the Know, the funniest, smartest, dumbest show on TV. I'm gonna sit over here. Yes, okay, great. I'm gonna sit over here and I'm gonna bring out my lovely panel. Let's give them a warm round of applause for Zach Woods, Brandon Gardner, Reilly, Tart, Woo! Hi, ladies. Welcome. The cast and creators of In the Know. How exciting!
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. Zach Woods, creator, EP, actor, Lauren Caspian, you know what I'm saying? Lauren Caspian. We have Brandon Gardner, creator and EP, Leif, Hansen, animation director, Reilly, who plays Fabian, Tart, who plays Carl, J. Smith Cameron, who plays Barb, and Bushnell, who plays Chase. I need to address Tart the way I always do, which is Cartar.com. And he's Okay, so I also need to say that I have known Brandon and Zach. If I say the real amount of years, they're gonna know how old we are.
We're grand dames.
We've known each other for so long, and it's been so thrilling to see these two big brains make something that I've known is in them for all these years. It's really, truly such a special show. I am curious how you guys, I know you guys have written together and worked together for years. What was it about this particular world that made you want to sort of dive in?
Sorry,
What?
I'm just going to be distracted by this unless I mention it. I'm sorry, and you have not signed up for this, sir. And you haven't volunteered for this, but there's the man with the most dense and beautiful bearded mustache. Right here. And it's such a good beard. It's such a good, strong American beard, such as I never see anymore. Right here. And can I ask you to stand up and give you a round of applause? That the feeling of Confederacy. I am so glad that you're here, and everyone, I'm sure everyone has something as wonderful about them as that beard, but less of the
The beard is inside.
Yeah, sometimes the beard is inside. Yes. Speaking of which, when Brandon and I were writing, or trying to figure out how Chase would look as a puppet, we were like, he should be a very, very hot, frat boy, probably Asian, and so I was sending him picture after picture of shirtless, jacked young men all oiled up, and his wife would keep hearing the ding ding, and then there would be another, right?
Yeah, just so many like hot Asian men.
So I'll talk of beards, maybe.
Yeah.
But
were you thumbs upping and thumbs downing? Who you like?
Yeah, I'd be like too hot, too young.
I have to be able to focus.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, so you were asking how we got the idea?
I was, yeah. How you got the idea? Yes, let's talk about that. How'd you get this dang idea? Let's see.
Mike Judge, who is one of the creators and showrunners, but who lives in Austin and is in a kind of tranquil Texas paradise at the moment, I did Silicon Valley with him, and he noticed that there was a kind of unfortunate NPR-ness that wafted around me, and that I also asked a lot of intrusive questions, and so he was like, oh, do you ever think about doing like a stop-motion NPR show? And then I called Brandon, we started talking about it, and I think for a long time, I think we would sort of quietly confide in each other about how much we hated parts of ourselves. And to have a puppet to assign all of those things that we disliked about us and be able to punish the puppet felt in some way, and then also hopefully redeem the puppet as well felt exciting. Okay, I'm going to talk less.
No, don't talk less, talk more.
I think in the very beginning, the idea Mike came to was like the interview part of it.
Right.
And he was like, I know Zach will be great at that. And then as we started talking about that, we started talking about, well, who else would work at that NPR station, and we got more and more excited about those people. A lot of it was like us just talking about people we know and being like, oh, Mike knew a sound engineer that he used to work in radio, and he knew sort of a Carl.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, I think we're identifying parts of ourselves, but there also be things like Zach and I and you and Carl know each other from like this improv community, which is this very like, liberal, progressive community, which is also our tribe. But sometimes someone would say something or tweet something and be like, that's a little weird, right? And I can't say it out loud because I'm nervous. But Zach, you thought that was weird.
Oh, large font, that was something. Would you talk about the large font thing?
So a lot of times it would just be noticing, it's like not necessarily disagreeing with their politics, but seeing the ways in which people's ego and insecurity gets in the way of that or contradicts that. And so an example was Zach was walking through Larchmont, which if you live in LA is a very nice neighborhood, but the houses cost a lot of money. And he saw a lawn decal for one of those like armed guard things, but in the same yard where there was like a defund the police. So like, they probably were like, defund the police, do not send money to the police. We send out personal money to guards, so we'll only protect us. And it was like a $4 million house, and they didn't see the competition of those signs, which we found pretty funny.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you guys do, there's such a like tightrope in this show of, I honestly, it's so impressive the way you sort of, the balance of making fun of people like that, but these characters are, talk about the balance of how you make fun of these characters that somehow we still are rooting for and love, and are pieces of you perhaps, no shade.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the cast and the animators, because I feel that actors and writers obviously have very different parts of the story to tell. And I think as a writer you can be satirical, but as an actor you really have to take the side of the character, otherwise it just feels nasty. I always think of like, actors are like the parents of their characters, and if you've ever seen a parent make fun of their kid in public, it's the worst thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Right? Like someone belittling their child, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
So as an actor, even if you're playing someone who is demonstrably loathsome, you don't want to judge them, you want to take their side and try to show what's redeemable or at least vulnerable about them. And I think the combination of, this is Brian, who was the director of the animation, and then all of these actors who have such depth and sensitivity, even when they're saying crazy shit about their foreskins or whatever, it's like, there's still so much human feeling behind them, that I think if you treat them like human beings in the execution, you can satirize them in the script, if that makes sense. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think of it like making the show, like it was a big thing we talked about with the writers earlier, is how we identify with the characters and their behavior. And it made me, I think, a little bit more empathetic now. Like I might see a tweet where I'm like, oh, that is like the most self-serving, like value projecting, please love me tweet. But then it's like, but it's a please love me.
Yeah.
It's like someone who like desperately wants people to know like I'm on the right side and I'm doing my best. And there's a lot of that, and the characters, even at their worst, are like, there's a lot of like, please love me. Like I just want to be thought of as interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about how Shag Machine got involved in the show, and was that from the very start? You lucky folks to get to work with Shag Machine?
It was crazy.
It's amazing. So you mentioned earlier that this was always intended to be that was you. This was never, when you guys were coming up with this, it was never going to be live action. Is that right?
It was never going to be live action. We, in the very, very beginning, it was like, will it be 2D or stop motion? And Mike was very excited about the possibility of it being stop motion. And then the more we talked about that, the more stop motion felt like very fitting.
Yeah.
That like these characters are going to be played by these fragile puppets felt very appropriate.
Yes, totally.
And then I think Shadow Machine, so Dustin Davis and Mike were like, well, Shadow Machine is the best.
Yeah.
Let's go to them first.
They just won an Oscar.
They did.
And they just won an Oscar for Guillermo del Toro, Pinocchio. And then they did Arsha. And
Wait, no in between.
do you remember when Will Smith won an Oscar and then he ruined his life? And he said, it's when God has you at the most high, that he brings you low.
Yes, that's right.
Exhibit B.
So Brian, what was it like with these guys and what was it?
Low was pretty good.
That's right. That's a good compliment.
Sorry.
No, what was the creative process like working with these guys? How
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. There was if you ever get a chance to get into a stop motion studio and shooting something bigger than just a man, do it.
Yeah.
Because it's so exciting. So we got like 20 animators animating the show, and we are animating on 3 or 4 episodes at a time. And every morning, same brand would pop up, and they would directly sort of set
On Zoom, yeah.
on Zoom. Direct like 7 or 10 of the animators on their show. So yeah, and there was sort of like quite often in animation you get very animation direction at the time. And these 2 guys were really never talking about where the puppet was positioned, but mostly about what the puppet was feeling and where it was coming from, and all that. And the thing that they were never mean to each other was really quite funny notion. Because you were quite often like the automatic feeling about the character would go in one direction, but quite often saying when we were like, no, this over here. That's where the action and the feeling is. So it was very interesting and wonderful
Yay.
collaboration.
I was just gonna say, like, for our part, like, we learned so quickly that they had a genius we don't possess. That it would have been so silly for us to try to get that note of like raise an eyebrow here maybe. It was like so much easier for us to just talk to them as actors and be like, your performance, what you will bring to it, would never have been able to have told you to do that.
Something that's so incredible about stop motion animation, there's a couple things. One is you meet the animators and then you get to know them partly as people, but you get to know them through the characters, and often they can feed parts of themselves that they would not necessarily feel comfortable revealing socially through the characters. So there's one, I've talked about this before, there's one animator in particular, Malcolm, who's this kind of like wiry little British guy who's very, he's not that little. I don't know why I said that. I sounded insulting. Yes, I'm quite problematic. But he was, kind of, it had that kind of British irony and remove and everything. And then we had a scene with Barb and Carl where they have this very sweet, tender, kind of tentative moment together. And you could see Malcolm feed the kind of gentle, shy, delicate parts of himself into these puppets. And it was such a beautiful way to get to sort of cut through all of the conditioning to the trembling center of this kind of tough guy. And also, the other thing that's really incredible is one of the things we try to focus on a lot is that everyone contains multitudes. Everyone has the capacity to be extraordinarily beautiful and absolutely ghoulish all in the same hour. And one thing that's so incredible about stop motion is each character is authored by 25, 30 different animators on top of the voice performances from these actors. So within each individual character, there is all of this multifacetedness as a function of the animation process, because there are literally 25 people moving their eyebrows and their faces and their eyes and everything. And so that gives a kind of dimensionality that luckily we didn't have to write or direct.
That's amazing. Okay, cast. I'd like to talk to you guys. This cast is so incredible. The characters are so specific. From the first episode, I know who you guys are. You just did, voice acting is such a tricky thing, and I just have to commend you. I really think this cast is phenomenal. I'm curious, with voice acting, there's so many different ways to record. Did you guys ever get to record together? Yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah,
Was it fun?
we were all in one big room for a while, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So we were able to work off of each other and play off of each other, and they were also recording us as well. So they were taking some of our movements in our voice acting to sort of lead that into our characters. So that was really cool too. I'm curious, you guys coming from, you two writers coming from the improv world, was there any improvisation? Yes, right?
Tons.
Tons. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's fun. What about with the live action? How do we even the people the celebrities that are not stop motion animation? How did that work?
Mostly it was just interviews, like we would put up a still image of Lauren.
Yeah.
Brandon would introduce the interview, and then we just talk to them for an hour, me as Lauren, and they talk to this picture of
It
Lauren.
would also be on Zoom.
Yeah.
So we would send someone to wherever they wanted to record, and he would set up the audio and the camera, and then they would just come on Zoom and see me, and I'd just be like, hey,
Hi.
you don't know what? And I'd say, like, Lauren's gonna come on in a second and introduce you, and all we want you to do is act like you're on a real NPR show. And if you think it's ridiculous, you can act like that. If you get uncomfortable, you can act like that, but don't feel like you have to be uncomfortable. We want it to be fun. We did our best to research, and here we go. And then Zach would talk to them as Lauren for about an hour, and we just went wherever it needed to go. And then at the end, he'd hop on as himself and be like, hey, thank you for that.
There was, but when we did this one, this is the one with Jorge that you guys just saw, right?
Yeah.
He was smoking so much weed.
I can see that. See this weird split.
I think some of it's in there. He went on this crazy 10-minute tangent talking about swimming with dolphins.
Yeah.
And it was like brilliant and profound and poignant and like very moving. And he wouldn't his improv was kind of life-changing. Like so actualizing. And it truly comes through in your performance. You guys really connect. I mean, you were doing that interview, of course, right? Yeah, we were on Zoom with each other for like what, 4 or 5 hours?
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah, that was where we had a script of like the beats, and then just would always be like, now you can do it.
Yeah.
What would you say? What would your dream for be? And so like, yeah, like the dolphin stuff, not scripted. That was
Yeah. Like, I know you're an actor, but I think you guys fell in love. He fell in love with me.
He definitely was so flirty.
He was a real flirty rascal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just making the improv go romantic.
It's not that kind of.
Wait, maybe don't do that. Speaking of love, can we talk about Carl and Barb for a second? Yeah. This is
Somebody just went,
yeah. That's Ross and Rachel level. That was quite a reaction. This is the sweetest will they won't they couple on TV right now. I love them so much. How much have you guys met before working on this?
No, I never met him.
We hit it right off.
You sure did.
It's hot up here.
I know. We're just acting. Okay, so can you guys tell me something about your character, maybe like a personality trait or something that you absolutely love, something you fell in love with about your character?
Well,
Yeah.
I loved everything about that character, about this character. But I like that she's so self-deprecating, and yet she's the most capable,
Yeah.
the dead mother, and the most capable one. And then there's this whole mystery about her husband. We don't really get into that, and you can't quite tell whether she's really traumatized or she killed him herself. You really know that she's kind of mysterious in a way. Like she doesn't look like a woman of mystery, but she kind of is. And I just love that they have this rapport,
Yeah.
shall we say. And it's just budding, like in the first episode. It's just kind of like, I don't know, what would you say about it?
It was pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
I like how my guy's kind of like the voice of reason,
Yeah.
but while also still having his own quirks. But he's kind of just like constantly sighing around these people. You can tell he knows them all.
Yeah.
Like, which I think is a good trait to have, even if you're like, well, I'm not going nowhere. I gotta put up with it.
Yeah.
But I like how he's a nice dude. I think he's a real nice guy.
He's a really good guy.
And I'm not.
I love Chase's confidence.
Mhm.
I don't think he's insecure about anything. And I just love how he's kind of just like unapologetically
Yeah.
himself all the time. He is just himself, and like I always like to say he's kind of like a frat bro but with a heart of gold.
Yeah.
And he always means well, but maybe just doesn't come out the right way. But yeah, I love Jason. I think he brings just like a fun kind of youthful energy to the office.
I like Chase's relationship with Chunks. That's kind of my favorite part of the show. I love my character. I love Fabian. She's a wild one. I always say this, but she's kind of like the walking comment section of the internet. And I love that about her. I think that she has such a bleeding heart, and all she wants to do is help people and make the world a better place. And she does it wrong every time. And I love that because same, girly. I think she's the best. And she also, there's a lot of vulnerability there and sadness there that you get to see towards the end with Lauren, and I think she was so beautifully written. Yeah.
And what about you, Zachary?
I'm not a fan of this. I think, I guess I agree with that idea of like the core vulnerability. I'm now gonna be like Lauren, but
That's okay.
forgive me.
We love Lauren.
I love James Baldwin. There's a James Baldwin quote where he says this thing about, I think one of the reasons people cling so stubbornly to their hatreds is they sense once hate is gone, they'll be forced to deal with pain. And I really feel that, where it's like we do so many frantic tap dances and little hostile maneuvers to avoid a feeling of loneliness, inadequacy, rejection. And I think it's a fairly universal thing. Everyone has their own coping strategies, but that desire to feel like, to not want to take off the scab and see the kind of weeping wound underneath, it is so universal. And so Lauren, I think, feels like he has to be interesting in order to be lovable. But we all live in Hollywood, and we know there's plenty of interesting people who are not especially lovable. And there are plenty of people who are not in any extrinsic way sexy or dazzling, or they don't have a legendary beard, but they are profoundly lovable and beautiful and worthy just by virtue of being a person. And so, I don't know, this is like the least funny answer ever given at an FYC comedy thing, but it's a little earnest. But I think that feeling of like, even when we're thrashing around, hoping not to get in trouble, hoping to be forgiven, hoping to be loved, and it's so unseemly, there is at its core something kind of like lovable and little kid-like about it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with this. I actually didn't hate him at all. I loved him completely.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm now ridiculing my child in public.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, Ryan, I'm curious with, what is like how do I say this, like the hardest part about physically doing this document? I mean, it's the talent and precision and patience, I can't even imagine what goes into this. So what, Carl. It's hard for your mic
So I think the hardest thing is also the most wonderful thing.
Great, because that was my next question.
So the hardest thing is everything is physical. So there's only a certain amount of all the things. It's like shooting live action. So there's 11 Lauren, and he's performing on 11 different stages at the same time. But there's only like 7 clipboards, and there's only like 8 microphones. So all the little things need to line up, but at the same time, that is also the most wonderful thing, because everything is so real and tactile, and it's like we work behind like dark curtains, and in behind all the little curtains, there's a little wonderland of adventure happening.
Yeah.
And wandering around these stages and seeing the performance as they emerge is just like fantastic.
Yeah.
You press the space bar, and then 6 seconds go by, and it's just wonderful. It's just that is the most magical thing. But it all is at the same time the most hardest thing, because it's like it takes time and it's painful, and things never actually like fit, and your cold sweat are running down your neck when you suddenly realize you've been shooting 7 shots with Lauren with his little like telephone thing on the left side, and now you're cutting together with other 8 shots where it's on the right side. And it's just like, oh. So yeah, all that fun.
I'm sure most of the actors, all the actors have done voiceover for cartoon animation before, but I would imagine as actors that it is so thrilling to watch the final product of this. Like, it feels so collaborative and like it's such a part of you as an actor. And just knowing from my experience, sometimes you do a cartoon and you're like, oh, is that my voice? Like it's so removed. This feels like you're the same. You are Zach and Lauren. Like there's no difference. I was curious if that was what it was like getting to that.
It was. I've done a lot of them, and you're never in a room with the other actors. Like I've never been in a room with the other actors.
It's so solo usually, right?
Super solo.
Yeah.
They make you do like a million takes, and at a certain point, I'm not calling anybody else specifically that I need the job. But they'll like you'll have a line, and it's a lot of yelling, which is one of my favorite things about this show. That I never had to yell. But you scream, and then they'll go, "All right, yeah, let's get 3 more like that." And you go, "Well, can you tell me what I need to do differently? Because I'm just screaming." There it is! I just did like 5 of them, but this is, we were all together. Zach and I, especially when we did our individual stuff, we improvised entire scenes together, and that part was great. It was always, he was like, do whatever you want to do. If you start coughing, like, keep it in. It was like super, like, we want this to be real the whole time. So it was truly the best experience doing voiceover. I had to focus on keeping my voice deep enough to portray a man much older than that.
And it's wonderful when you start, like when you have the puppet just sitting there, dead on the stage, and then the first thing you get is the voice, and it's quite important that the voice is great because that's the first bit of inspiration is in the puppet, and then you sort of like take the voice and yourself and put it all in there. So yeah.
I have so many more questions, but I know we are out of time, but I just want to say to you guys, if you haven't watched it, this is such a special show. It's thrilling that it's on television, especially in the world we live in today. For reasons that I won't get into it, I watch those too, but this is like poetry. It's so beautifully done. It's beautiful to look at. It's so goddamn funny and smart and dumb.
Thank you.
I'm begging you to watch it. Tell your sister and your brother and your friends and your little children. This is one of the best casts we have on television right now. This is so exciting to be in front of you guys. Really, truly a magical TV show.
Darcy, thank you for doing this. Darcy,
It's so nice to be here.
Beard envy.
Cocktails and watching the